Hey everyone, here we are today. We're located in Springfield, Massachusetts for Armory Day, and we are looking at the original Springfield Armory Museum. And today in Springfield they're going to be having some events, a parade. It's open to the public, and as a member of the Black Watch reenacting group, they came down here, and we're going to be down with some of these other reenactors, everything from Civil War, World War I, World War II, and they're going out to the Korean and Vietnam War impression. So it's a pretty cool day. Hopefully the rain is going to hold out. I'm going to try to walk around, interview some of the people, and get an idea of what they're here for and what they're representing and what they're reenacting, and hopefully it'll be an enjoyable video clip. Anyways, catch you in a bit. Alright guys, I'm sitting here at a table that I'm going to enjoy, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. I'm sitting here right now with Lynn Kessler, who's doing a Guadalcanal impression, and then we're going to segue over here to Mr. Randy Cook, who's also a member of the Black Watch group, and he's going to tell us about some of the stuff that's on his table. Lynn, tell me what you're doing there, tell me what you're wearing and what you're representing.
Well, this is the USMC starting in Guadalcanal, which was primarily the kit that was worn throughout the war. It didn't really change a whole lot. The biggest difference would be primarily the weapon that was used. When the Marines went into Guadalcanal, they went in with the Springfield, the W W2 GI, bolt action rifle, rather than the M1. That came later. Kit otherwise, helmet is the M1. What's unique about this is it's a Hawley liner M1. It's a pressed paper liner which has a rolled paper rim. That was early war unique, but they found that it didn't hold up very well in combat conditions because, hey, it's paper.
Yeah.
It's going to fall apart. So, other than that, I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of difference between an early war Marine and a later war Marine, other than things like on the pack. This pack was fairly standard throughout the majority of the war. This E-tool was fairly standard throughout the majority of the war. The bayonet was rather unique in that in the early war it was the 03 version of the bayonet that was used on the Springfield, and that was carried through a little bit later in other battles, but then they shifted to the M1 and the shorter bayonets. The shelter half was a Marine Corps design, had two ends on it. It was a tan color shelter half, and then later on in the war they developed a two-ended camouflage thing. Okay? So, other than that, there's really
What was the common gear that the guys would carry in their packs?
Socks, shirt,
Essentials.
a little bit of food, essentials, yeah, toothbrush, powder, foot powder.
Just enough to get them by the day.
Nothing to get by the day.
Outstanding.
A stove and some tablets, but not much. The Marines were pretty short of everything on Guadalcanal.
Light and fast.
Light and fast.
Light and fast.
And very hungry.
No, I'm sure. Randy,
Yes.
tell me what's on the table, my friend.
Okay, as Lynn pointed out, the first primary weapon of the Marine early in the war was the 03 Springfield rifle. The A1 version had a C-stock, basically an unchanged weapon from 1903 and a World War I weapon. The Marines also adapted it for sniping use by taking an 8-power Unertal target scope and modifying the weapon to be used in a sniper's type role. Also early in the war, the Marines were hurting for weapons, and a couple of the weapons that they adopted for a very short time were the Johnson rifle, which is what I have here. It was a rotary 10-shot recoiling mechanism. These were originally purchased by the Dutch and were headed to the Dutch East Indies, but the Japanese overran the Dutch East Indies, and the Marines actually procured these for use early in the war. They also experimented around, because there were not enough Thompsons to go around. One of the guns they adopted and used primarily just on Guadalcanal was the Rising submachine gun. The Rising was manufactured by Harrison & Richardson in Worcester, Massachusetts. 45 caliber blowback action. Very, very tight tolerance gun. that fired from a closed bolt, which was very unusual for a machine gun of World War II. Most fired from an open bolt. The problem with this type of weapon in the jungles of Guadalcanal with the tight tolerances, if you can imagine a rainforest environment with a blued firearm with tight tolerances, what would happen is they would jam up and became very unreliable weapons for the Marines. So the Marines quickly grew to dislike them as a combat firearm. They're a great firearm. Police departments all over the United States had that as a primary weapon from World War II right up into the 1970s. The main submachine gun, when they could get enough of them, was the Thompson 1928 model. Was issued originally with a 20-round clip and also 50-round drums. 50-round drums did not find favor primarily because they were a pain in the ass to load. You had to take the drum completely apart and very carefully put 50 rounds in there, making sure that none of them fell over, then put the drum back together, then wind the drum, and then very carefully insert it into the weapon. The big problem with that is that it only gave you 4 seconds worth of firepower versus throwing a 30-round stick in there very quickly, emptying it, throwing another one in. Obviously a lot quicker than playing around with the drums, so drums kind of went out of favor very quickly. M1 carbines were developed in 1941. It was a lightweight weapon to be used by mortarmen, machine gunners, that sort of thing that just needed a self-protection weapon, but not the primary weapon that was used by the frontline Marine. M1 carbines were eventually brought into service within 6 months' time in 1941 from development stage to being produced. They were produced by 10 different contractors, many of which never produced a gun before or since World War II. Those 10 contractors made 6 million M1 carbines in 4 years' time. And these were actually used in Korea and also in Vietnam by our South Vietnamese friends. The M1 Garand rifle, produced at Springfield Armory, was developed originally in 1936, had some production problems, some things that needed to be worked out. Was issued primarily to the Army first, to the Marines second. Most Marine units were not fully equipped with the M1 Garand rifle until 1943. Hence, all of the early campaigns like Guadalcanal, the Marines were armed with the .03 Springfield. This was a blowback action gas-operated that fired 8 rounds in a clip form, and after the 8th round fired, the clip ejected out and the action stayed open, allowing the Marine to feed a new clip in. The United States was the only country in World War II that issued its frontline Marine and Army a semi-automatic rifle to every frontline troop in World War II. With the adoption of the M1 Garand and being a very mobile force in World War II, that 16-inch bayonet that was around from World War I and the beginning of World War II ended up being cut down and also manufactured in a 10-inch version. It was easier to put it on your waist belt and actually sit in a vehicle than having this thing on your pack like it was originally intended to be carried. Trench shotguns had been around since World War I. This is a model 1897 Winchester-made trench gun. This particular one was made in 1942 at Winchester. These were primarily issued to Marines for clearing out caves and also guarding prisoners. Not that they took a whole lot of prisoners in the Pacific. It was issued with 12-gauge double-aught buckshot in brass rounds, so in the Pacific theater, paper rounds, obviously with wet conditions, would swell and not be used, so not be useful. So they issued it in the Pacific, both to the Army and to the Marines, with brass shell casings. The other primary weapon that was issued to Marines in the Pacific was the Browning automatic rifle. It's a 1918 design that had been modified just prior to World War II into the A2 configuration. It had 2 rates of fire, a slow and a fast, both fully automatic rate of fire. Again, gas-powered, fully automatic. It was the squad automatic weapon of World War II. 20-round box magazine. A BAR man would carry approximately 12 to 15 of these, and he had an assistant that would carry even more, along with usually an M1 carbine. This was the base of fire weapon for the Marine in World War II.
Yeah, that should be clarified a bit, though.
Okay.
That became the base of fire weapon after 43, 44.
44, exactly.
Tactics started developing differently from the Army in Europe.
Yep.
The Marines went into Guadalcanal with a basic rifle company, all carrying Springfields, but they had machine gun, I don't think they were called platoons.
They were machine gun
platoons.
Yeah, platoons, and they were issued out as
companies.
and they were
parceled out.
And they were heavy machine guns.
They were heavy machine
water
guns,
cooled
30
machine
cal.
guns.
Yeah. So
But-
that was the base of fire for the Marine in World War II.
Yep.
Up
But-
until
Yeah, go ahead.
You know,
I was going to say, but by your later campaigns, like your Iwo Jimas and Saipans and Tinians, they were issuing 3 Browning automatic rifles to every squad. So you had 3 squads of 3 men or 4 men, depending on casualties. Each one had a Browning automatic rifle. The Marines loved the Browning automatic rifle. They
Tactics
thought it
changed.
was one of the things the Marines, and you'll see it in photographs, did was by unscrewing this front muzzle, they could get rid of this 4 or 5 pound bipod. Marines very rarely, if ever, use that because they were in an offensive role, and that was primarily good for a defensive weapon. So a lot of the photographs you'll see of Marines with these do not have the bipod on them.
Awesome. Well, listen, Lynn, Randy, I really appreciate your time. And Randy, by the way, if that needs a home, I've got one for it.
Yeah.
And a matter of fact,
everybody
if
else.
any of these needs a home, please let me know. I will definitely make some room in the safe for each one of these. But I appreciate your time, guys.
Thank you.